2 months ago exactly, I made a video giving my opinions on what I believe to be the best routes for pugging, especially coming for someone who doesn't really know exactly what they want out of each Prideful split. And that video's done very well, and since then a lot of people have been asking me if I'll be updating it or what the current status is on these routes. So right out of the gate, I will say those routes were made with pugging in mind, and I had spent a lot of time thinking about them, and they're what I recommend today. If you're in that case where you're pugging your first 10 for, the first Prideful that you've ever done, right? So these are there for beginner players. Today we're going to talk a little bit about maybe a more advanced route, and I'm also going to try to update and revisit the routes that I did make, and we'll see how they hold up. So this document will be in the description again. But I have some things that I've definitely been doing differently in the keys I've been doing. We're kind of at the level of 17-ish, 17 maybe upward to 18, depends on the week, is our level of progression. So obviously things start to become a lot more important to maximize. And there's a lot more to consider when you start to get higher keys, like what is more difficult and more dangerous than it might have been on a lower key. So let's take a look at what we had for the previous routes. We'll just go through all the dungeons again. So we started with the other side last time, and this route is still something that's in effect. This is not it, obviously, but this route is still something that's in effect, and I think is very, very, very good. And I don't know, I've seen other people try other things, but there's just not a lot of wiggle room in this dungeon. The problem is, I don't think this is a very good route at all. Even though it's the only one that I could see feasible, and it makes really good splits at really good times, really all three bosses. It's perfect. But there's got to be something better out there, because there's so much downtime in this dungeon. I cannot believe it. Like, if you ever look actually on details, which I didn't even know was a feature until Faxi showed me recently, you could actually see your out of combat time here. If you're in a dungeon segment, it will show what your out of combat time is. Which is ridiculous. And in the other side, it's really ridiculous. Like, I'm talking about like a significant chunk of time out of combat in this dungeon. So while I don't necessarily have anything to tell you today about what I would change, I definitely think there has to be something that we could change here to make this an easier, to make this like more time efficient. And one of the things that I had been talking about with Jix was actually pulling this mob. So instead of pulling these with the Pride and killing these with the Pride, typically I mind control out one of the mobs and then kill those 3 mobs with the Pride. Instead of doing that, if you can catch this mob at the right time, pull this instead, and then grab these and kind of take them backwards. So it's not really like, you're getting this mob, which is way more dangerous than these mobs. So that could make it more efficient, but you're still running from here all the way to here. And that's like, yeah, it's going to cut down on the out of combat stat, if that's what you really care about. But I don't, like, honestly, if you fought these mobs for like 5 minutes, because that's how long it took you to backpedal all the way up here, is that more efficient than just killing them in a minute and a half and then running? I don't know. So this dungeon has a real problem with this, and honestly, every time it's the hotfixes come through for dungeons and I don't see changes to the other side's timer or something, I'm always scratching my head. So that makes me believe that there's something out there that Blizzard is waiting for us to do, and I have yet to figure it out. But anyway, that's the other side. So no changes on the route, nothing to update there. Halls of Atonement, though, is another dungeon that substantially is going to be different. So we actually have a new route here. I've basically separated this dungeon into 2 routes, which is the original one that I still recommend very highly today on tyrannical weeks, and the second one, which I now will be doing almost exclusively on fortified weeks. But there is a caveat to the fortified one. All right, so if you watched my first video, one of the main things that I like to focus on is routes that can be ran with regardless of comp, like completely agnostic of what 5 players you have. Even if you're solo, you can do these routes. And that is not going to happen in the second route, but it does happen in the first route. So if you don't have a rogue, or you don't feel comfortable in viz-potting for whatever reason, it's nothing to be difficult. It's not difficult to do, but it does mean you can't use a potion on this boss. So that's another reason why I run this route on tyrannical, because it lines up the boss situation much, much better. And this is going to line up the stuff that's important in this dungeon much, much better. So what we do here that's different is the first pull is now including these 2 mobs, and we're going to lust on it. Okay, this is actually a really big deal. And then what we're going to do is try to split for 20 before this Shard of Healthiest. And from now on, we're going to try to get a Shard of Healthiest after Prideful every single time. And that's how we're going to do it. Okay, so yeah, you split, you get Big Lust here, and then split with this pack for 20. This means you need these mobs here, okay? It's a little awkward because for some reason this final mob on the right will not aggro. These three kind of like split pull off it, so you have to kind of run in and tag it, which is kind of a pain, especially if you don't have a Venthyr. This is another thing about this route though compared to the old one. The old one requires a Venthyr. This one is completely, like, it doesn't matter if you don't have one at all. But you obviously should have a Venthyr if you're taking this key serious. But yeah, so then you're going to pull all of this into a giant pull with Prideful, which is a little bit harder. Again, a little bit harder than it looks, especially if you're a Blood DK, because all these mobs are casters. You want to try to maintain good threat on them and interrupts on them, but also getting these mobs makes it a little difficult. But once it's all in, it should die really, really quick. And then we're going to come all the way back. And now some people would pull some of this stuff here maybe, but I am not doing that. Instead, I'm going over here. And now we're actually going to go downstairs. And we're going to get, let's make sure of this. Yeah, so our 40% split is going to happen here. One thing is we need this groundskeeper, which actually patrols around. You would get this pack, these two mobs, and then these three. Oftentimes I just combine these depending on the week. It's not that bad. But obviously make sure you keep stunning and interrupting the Houndmaster's cast, which they made even easier to see. But then this guy is like actually the split breaker. Like if you don't pull him, you need a whole nother pack, which is fine, but it's like actually a really important mob. We've had this happen where I'm literally just sitting there waiting for him. So it can be a little unlucky. Not ideal. See, this is not something I would recommend for pugging because of that. Like if you don't see where this mob is, you might accidentally pull this pack or something else, and then you're going to be off for the rest of the splits. So, but yeah, that's the goal. Get 40 here, and then you come back up. So back up the stairs and do the Shard of Healthiest again. And again, all four of these mobs. Now, so a lot of people pull this stuff. A lot of people pull this stuff. I will not be doing that. Instead, I will now go back down around the stairs and pull all of these. Like we jump down in the old route and get all of this together. A lot of people still criticize this pull, but honestly, like I don't see an issue with it. If it's easy for me as a tank, then I really don't see how it could be difficult for DPS. But regardless, we get that, and then we get these four dudes here. We also need these two as well at some point. So it depends on where you want the split to occur. Some people like to fight the Prideful out in the courtyard area, or maybe you're more comfortable fighting the courtyard kind of in this condensed area that I was just talking about, which is why I think a lot of DPS struggle with this, is because they have the kind of claustrophobic in that small little area. So yeah, if you want to get these mobs first and then make the split happen out here and then run back in, that's up to you. But either way, you need these two mobs one way or the other, well before, like this looks like a pack that you'd be pulling on the way up, but no, you're pulling it before you approach the first boss. So anyway, so you pull all this and then you come with the Prideful for this. So Shard of Healthiest always has Prideful, all three of them. And then you come back here and kill these mobs basically just to clear them out and get the count. And then you go boss, and you do not have a pride for the boss, which I know a lot of people think. Like I've had a variety of opinions on this, like you know, this boss is one of the easiest bosses in the game, and there's no reason to have pride for it. But I don't think that's true. I think that's only true because you also usually have gargoyles and, you know, other CDs and stuff up for it. But yeah, obviously on Fortified, it does die really quick with all that stuff. So having Pride, Lust, and the Gargoyle really just kind of deletes it. But I will say, like, if you fight this boss for like multiple minutes, it gets really crazy because you have to constantly be moving him around this area, and it does invite a lot of problems. So even though the boss isn't going to challenge anybody's health pool very often, the longer that fight goes, the worse it gets, in my opinion. So anyway, so then we come up here and we would then like execute a invis skip or some type of skip. Whether you have a rogue, this is a great dungeon. Just bring a rogue on anyway because of how much stun and lockdown they'll have. But yeah, bringing a rogue here obviously allows you to save the potion, which is kind of a big deal, honestly. And one thing that will differ from a lot of people who are running a similar route to this is I will be very, very cautious to make sure that I need both of these Stoneborn Slashers. Okay, so this is not optimized count, I feel like, but it's still me erring on the pug side, if you understand what I mean. Because typically a lot of people would pull some of this stuff and they'd get their splits differently, so they'd be they might not even need these mobs, or they'd only need one of them, or like I've seen like they're way over count, like they actually get one of these and they barely need it. They need like 0.5% count, and they're getting 2.5% count. And all that does is then they go over count in the dungeon. And that's not a big issue because the last mob, I feel like, gives way too much count for the amount of difficulty offers. Like, I know it's a long, protracted encounter, but it's not like, you know what I mean? There's not much going on there for that mob to give 7% count. You might as well not even consider that trash, right? Because it's like just the only thing you fight in before the last boss. So a lot of people don't care about whether they go over count in this dungeon. They'd rather have clean splits early. Understandable, but the reason I kept both of these here is because it's very likely that if you shroud, you're going to come out right at the top of the stairs here, and that has a large probability that you're going to aggro these mobs. Okay, now a lot of times they're both not active. One is usually active and the other is not. So if that happened, that would be ideal. But I ran the route that everybody was recommending, and I had that happen 2 or 3 times where we got to the top of the stairs, shroud, and somebody aggroes it coming out of the shroud. And we fight 2 mobs, and it's like, okay, great. Now we just need to make sure we kill them evenly, and we'll still get the 80% split that we want. But now we're like 5% overcount. So it's like, okay, so are you 100% sure that maximizing this first 70-some% count is worth going 5% overcount in a dungeon? Like, for me, I don't ever believe that. So instead, I've adjusted the route to make sure that you need both of these for 80. And it's a little awkward, but hopefully by now you understand how it works. They kind of alternate which one's active. So what I do is I fight one, like if one's active, it's probably about like every 10 seconds they alternate or something like that. So fight it for like 5 seconds, and then I just throw Death and Decay on the second one and run up the stairs, and it will aggro. Usually by the time Death and Decay is over, it will aggro, and then you fight both. And again, make sure you're dodging the mechanic there. But that's it. The rest is chalk. Like, there's nothing else to talk about. So that's the whole route. I do find it works very well on Fortified, but again, if you don't have an Invis Pot or a Shroud skip or some way to do that skip, you will need to find one or not do that route. Okay, so next up is Mists, and this is another one that I've changed substantially. So originally, I really like this route, honestly. It's just, I know maybe now it's more interesting, honestly, but this is it, right? Yeah. So, oh yeah, it's just up here. I'm looking at the wrong place. So anyway, we start up here, and what I used to do was pull really, really big here and use a Bloodlust, okay? And this always seemed like a really good idea to me, but at the time, I was doing keys that were a little bit easier, and I wasn't really recognizing the danger of this pack. These Soul Cleavers are pretty brutal, honestly, and they nerfed the hell out of them, but I still don't think I would do this. And part of this, sadly, is just social stigma. A lot of people do not want to do this pull, and even though it's a very well optimized pull, you're getting a massive pull in and bloodlusting, and as long as you have some backup plan to survive and not like wipe to this pack, it's super easy. It just doesn't, like, people are just not going to change what they see everyone else do. So it's a great route if you have no Night Fae, though, and that doesn't really happen nowadays because Night Fae is such a popular covenant. But on the off chance you have no Night Fae, this is what I would be doing. And again, it gets 40% before the second boss. But the main reason I switched away from that is because at some point they changed how the maze works, and I don't exactly understand it. But now you used to only be able to get 5. Now you can get upwards of 6 and 7 in this pack, in this area here, okay? So when I made this route, there would only be 5 actual things, okay, to go through. Obviously the first 2 and then 5 after. Now you can get at least 1 more, always. And then sometimes, I'm not exactly sure how this works, but sometimes, I think it's this pack right here, this is not actually a gate, or one of these, I don't know which, but one of these is not actually a gate. Like, there's no maze floor there. And I think that just is an extra pack. I never really properly paid attention to it, but long story short, if that happened, which is completely out of your control, you would then have to skip one of these packs or get Pride early. So basically, I was only ever able to do this route if we had a rogue. And it got to the point where it's like, okay, this is just not working. Now, the other main reasons to not do this route is because these trash mobs are just really, really easy compared to everything else in the dungeon. So if this was equatable difficulty, it would be a much better route in my opinion. But now that we've seen those 2 problems arise, and also we know how easy this route at the end is, it makes it almost like not doable anymore. So instead, we've changed to, this isn't it anyway, but yeah, we've changed to this. It's not, I'll get it formatted for the upload, but long story here, let's just go through it all now, and you'll see what I mean. But the main thing here, and then this is also a modified version of it where we use a Warlock gate skip. But let's go through it all now, and I'll show you what I plan on doing here. But effectively, you have to come through the gate. Now you could pull both of these, okay, but you don't really need them. Like, they're actually wasted mobs, so that's again 1.5% that you do not need for any split at any time in the dungeon. But if you want to get them, you can. They pad around the edge here, so if you don't get them, you need to make sure you split the difference when you go to the next pack. And then the next pull would be here. And then this is another reason why I used to not recommend this, but unfortunately it's getting to be mandatory. This pack needs to be skipped, okay? So you need to find a way to skip it, and you really do not want to be using an Invispot to do this. So there's a variety of ways to do it. I'm going to be making a video on how to do it easily. But yeah, literally just skip this pack in one of the variety of ways and move on to this pack here. This is one of the more dangerous packs because it's got 2 casters and 2 soul cleavers, but you know, at this point they've been nerfed, so it's all good. And then we come here for the even 20% split. Then of course we do boss, and then of course we're just like, you know, we're just assuming that we're getting all of the stuff that we're getting, so who even knows what we're getting in anymore at this point. I mean, I don't even know, but yeah, one way or the other, you're either going to be at 55 or 63. Okay, it's like about that one way or the other. You're either going to have 1 Prideful in this area or 2 Pridefuls in this area. Okay, so you just can't really predict it. But more common, I think it's probably like more than a 50% chance you're not going to have a Prideful here. A lot of people are actually pulling a gate. There's like a broken terrain thing here that you can actually pull mobs over the gate. And they do this to ensure that they have Prideful for Mistcaller. So that is an option, regardless of RNG. But then I feel like if you get bad RNG, so then you'd have 2 extra packs, and then we'd be at 70%, and then it would skew the rest of the splits, which if we agree that the end is the easiest part, we do not care about this having this for Mistcaller, because frankly, even though this fight is hard, it's not a DPS race in any way. It's just purely just go through all the mechanics. But so anyway, then down here is where things get interesting. So here we would get our pride, and then at this point you really want to capitalize on the pride. These prides are actually going to be really huge, so we would make sure to grab these bugs, which are actually patrolling around the area, so it's a lot more complicated. You need to make sure you find them and get them, and it's oftentimes going to be during this pull. You can't just wait for them, so you'll pull this and then get these, and these do a very bad poison debuff, so be ready. But you want to maximize that. And then at this point, you would have 76 here. And this is where things get a little squirrely, because if we had another one of these packs, we would be having a very bad split here. Literally one of these mobs, as you would see. Let's see if we can get them. Yeah, you see. So basically, it would split in the middle of the route. And that is really, really bad. Don't know what's going on here now, but it would split in the middle of the route. And you would have 83 and like well past 80 basically. So not ideal, especially because you really do not want to have that here. You can get knocked off very easily. I've had it happen. What's going on? I've had it happen multiple times where that complicates packs. But again, the trash is so easy that it almost doesn't matter. And then we're just finishing with this final 20% by going this way. And then you need to go over here and get this pack. Okay, so you run by the boss and get this pack. And if for some reason you still do not have count, which happens somewhat frequently for a variety of reasons, like mostly the maze, you can get this pack too, and it will actually be a clean split. If it happens the way I've seen it, it will always be a clean split. You will not have like 1 mob and then pride, and the other 3 will still be up. And then you just finish up with boss. So that's my new mist route. It's a little complicated, but it's nothing special. Okay, so let's go to Plaguefall. So we had talked a lot about Plaguefall, and unfortunately, the old route literally doesn't function anymore. I don't know what's going on with this. Yeah, they moved those. That's why. So it literally doesn't function anymore. The Plague Rock doesn't exist anymore. I used to be able to get a really nice split here. So I've been trying to keep people abreast of the situation. But unfortunately, yeah, that wasn't easy to do. So here it is now. This is what we're doing now, and it's a much, much better route. But it doesn't even matter if it is or isn't, because the old route's no longer possible. So What I do here is try to set up a cleaner split here. This isn't necessarily optimized, but it helps the rest of the dungeon. So we get a big pull out of the gate, and then we skip through the middle here by using this little pathway through the mushrooms. You actually don't need any type of skip material, like you don't need any way to do it. It just, you can walk through it. One thing you will see though is one of these plague boars will get very close to your group, and you actually don't want to avoid it. You want to pull it because it gives you 1.3% count, and just don't pull it with anything else, and you'll get either that one or this one easily. And then I get this pack, which is not a great pull. So instead what a lot of people do is they go around the area and then skip this pack. So they would get these two and then skip this. And it does give them a clean first split, but then the second split needs to change, which I don't want to do. So anyway, we have this here. We get this pack. This is a hard pack. It's probably one of the hardest packs in the dungeon. Just make sure you're interrupting the Stormer or whatever, stunning it. And then we get all of this stuff, which I know it was like flavor of the month to skip one of these, but I don't know why anybody would. That's inviting a lot of risk into the fight, which is already a risky fight. And then so we crush this boss. Okay, now there's a couple other options here that you should be aware of, but this is advanced. What I would be talking about there would be advanced, okay? Long story short, the higher key you get, these plague boars are starting to get really, really, really important. So at this point, I used to try to just kind of avoid all this, but it's just too valuable to be avoiding. So what we want to do is grab one plague boar. There's like 4 or 5 things in here that we could really utilize. So we CC one of these, grab one, kill it into this pack with the barrel, basically kill the barrel, finish the plague boar with the barrel, and then everything else dies because of both of those things. Then I would come and get the second plague boar and use it to either kill the plague rock or one of these packs, and then combine the rest and finish it up. And all of this trash is going to die extremely quickly. And then we come back around and basically do the same route that we've been doing. We're going to get a pride here, and this is another important pride. If you want to control undead here, if you need to. Otherwise, what is going to happen here is the pride is going to spawn right here, and you can actually then get the plague boars from down here and use it to kill the Prideful. So that's bordering on quite advanced, because you need to make sure you don't aggro this tentacle. If you aggro this tentacle, it's going to, yeah, it's not going to be good. I'll tell you that. As long as you have a CC for it, though, like a Hunter Trap or a Paralyze or something like that, it's fine. And then you can just, as a Blood DK especially, you can just grip these plague boars up. They will explode and basically kill the plague boar or the prideful mob for you. And I actually just released a video of me doing this route a couple days ago, so if you could find that. Otherwise, use the sheet and you could see all the plague falls I've done. I have every single run recorded this season in a spreadsheet. So anyway, nothing special here for the rest. There's nothing really to comment on, but I wanted to point out that you can get Prideful for the second boss if you want it, but I don't think you ever should. I think, again, this is another bait. This Prideful on this boss does not make this boss easier. It just makes him jump sooner, and that is a DPS loss. So typically, when you blow and do really good damage CDs on the pull, it's going to just force him to jump faster, and I don't think that's beneficial. Instead, you want to get out of the second and third set as fast as possible. So instead, we get a really clean split here. This is exactly 80, which I love to see, but it's, or 70. It even says it's wrong for some reason. I don't know what's up with that. I'll have to have a look at that. Something's wrong on the sheet maybe. But either way, this should be, oh yeah, it's exactly, that's why. It's exactly 60, and they think you need 60.01, but you don't. It's exactly count. You'll get it no matter what, as long as you do this route. And then the Prideful comes, you kill the Prideful and go to this really big pack. So I had been pulling this sniper because it's an easier kill than this Defender of Many Eyes, but it's a lot harder to actually get. So I don't think it's worth it anymore. Whatever you prefer, you can do. It's either of these, they're giving the same count, so it doesn't actually matter. Actually, this gives slightly more count, but it makes no impact on the route. So instead, I've now been just grabbing this because you can literally just run by it and it'll aggro and trickle in. The problem is you now have 3 Defenders of Many Eyes instead of 2, and that's why I was grabbing this, because it's like if they all put their shields up at one time, you're just not going to be able to stop them all. But DK is obviously really good at stopping these shields, so however you want to handle it, go for it. And then just be careful not to aggro. There's a tentacle right here. Come on down and make sure we have the defender pulled here. We do need this. And then what I usually do here, this is actually not even right yet, so I'll be remaking this. But regardless, what we want here is this pack here. Okay, we'll be getting these together. So it's a little bit difficult to do. You need to drop Death and Decay here to get this thing out of stealth. And then quickly run up here and solo grip the actual sniper. If you do not do either of these, they will remain separated by a large distance and you will not be able to kill them cleanly together. Okay, so I do feel like this saves a lot of time and it puts us at the right split. And as you see, we are now 97.5, and that is because I no longer recommend this. Let's finish the dungeon up here because it's definitely not, it's just not working. Like, I thought groups would be more open to it. But they just don't understand why it's good, and frankly, it's not as good as just doing it downstairs, so it doesn't really matter. Anyway, so but the same, everything else is the same. Literally nothing else changes. The only thing now is you need these slimes, and sometimes, you know, depending on exactly what you do, you can get all three of these, two of them, whatever. Like, now that you're making the previous split, you're gonna actually be slightly over count here. So what you could do is actually mind control one of these and keep these, and then, you know, adjust your count downstairs accordingly. But that's it. Plaguefall is actually really easy. The main thing here is just making sure you get a good middle area here. And in fact, I've seen people skip all of this and literally get like 60% of their count here, basically, because of how good. Like, as a DK, you can literally kill all of this trash with a Plaguefall. You would approach it the exact same way. You would get all of this opening stuff and then come around the back, clear out the back, and then start pulling these packs one by one back up to where we talked about fighting the Pride, and continue gripping Plague Boars up into them. I've literally seen people get every single one of these packs. These kind of in the middle ones are really hard to get, though. As a tank, you're going to need help getting them, but that's a topic for a different day. Okay, so that's Plaguefall. Sanguine Depths, I've literally changed nothing. I've seen a bunch of people fiddle with this dungeon and do all this weird stuff, but it's like, it's such a freaking easy split. Like, I'm not going to ever care about this. Honestly, maybe it's silly to say, but it's like, this is just way too easy of a progression dungeon-wise to actually be trying to, like, double shroud skip. And because, like, all of these skips that people do in here, if you do them and then die, you have to then rely on it to get back, and that's actually just going to disband the key. This is just way too easy of a timer. I know everybody looks at this as the hardest dungeon, and it is in many weeks, but it's not because of the timer, okay? So don't make it any harder on yourself than you have to. Just go pack for pack, honestly. That's my recommendation, and people won't like to hear that, but that's what I recommend. And that's what I've done in every one of my keys, and I've succeeded. I've never failed this dungeon because of the route. Never once. There's dungeons that I have failed because of the route, okay? This is not one of them. At any point have I ever failed this dungeon because of the route. It's always because of wipes on bosses. So do not worry about whether or not the route syncs up with what the meta looks like. If you want to try something else, feel free. You can get, better splits for Pridefuls if you do some of these skips, and they are worth entertaining, but you just better be ready that if you wipe, you're done. That's going to be it, probably, okay? You're going to have to do some, the same skip twice, and it's going to cause a lot of frustration. Whereas if you just do the route, normally you have plenty of time. I have upgraded this key with like 5 and 6 minutes left on the last boss. Okay, anyway, Spires is another one that we have a lot to talk about, so let's get to it. So the original route was just go right, basically. Now, instead, what we do is we have another I need to make. Maybe I never actually made it. This is probably it, but regardless, what we do now is, yeah, this is going to be it. Okay, so this is for tyrannical weeks, all right? The previous one I still do for fortified weeks, but very quickly, all we're going to do here, and I'll have, again, a link to it, we just want to get both packs of these cats. And this is also fix the old route if it goes bad. Okay, so you can do this if both packs of cats get pulled, because the right pack oftentimes get aggroed, people aggroed by accident, and then that's it. Your splits are wrong for the rest of the right side. So if that does happen, just go back left and do it here, and it's going to line up pretty well. But this is, again, slightly more advanced. The main thing here is that you're going to get a really, really good pride for the second boss, which is really important. And then Upstairs, you have to get a little tricky. So we are going to pull. So I'm going to even change this further than what I have right here. But originally, I was like, you could actually skip all 3 of these relatively easy. These first 2, you literally just run around. This first one is a little bit harder to dodge. You have to really hug the corner, but then this one's extremely easy to dodge. And this one, you do need a little bit of trickery. Either something like a Mind Soothe, or you can actually Warlock Portal up the railing on the stairs. You could do the Patented Hunter skip. You can literally just Shroud. There's a couple options. Again, a lot of ways to skip something like this. But if you have none of them, then you cannot do this route, okay? So instead, what I'm doing here is actually I'm going to not pull this. And what we're going to do is we're going to go up here, go around. We're not going to pull this. We're going to get this pack here. Just pretend this, change the order there. So we're going to get this pack first. It's still, you know, more dangerous than it looks. And then we're going to come here and get this pack. And as you see, we're going to be at a really good split. 100 almost exactly. Now, a lot of people don't like this pack because it has 2 Wardens and 2 Justicars or whatever they're called. 2 healers and 2 casters, basically. But frankly, so this is a tyrannical route, right? So why are we worried about interrupting trash on a tyrannical route? Like, I don't get it. I really don't. People are like, you can't pull that pack, dude. That pack's impossible. It's like, just interrupt the cast, dude. You know what I mean? Like, I don't know. It's not very pug friendly, maybe, but it's the perfect pack to pull for this route. And I will be doing it every tyrannical week from now on. So I'll have that in the description or in the spreadsheet there. But it's very easy to run. It's literally just get those 4 cats in the beginning and then go to the left. Literally get these 6 cats, I guess, total. And then go left. And you get great splits at a bunch of different times. So, all right. So that's Spires. Necrotic Wake, not changed at all. And again, this is another one that I should change because this is a really bad route at times. And then it's a really, really good route at other times. And that's the problem. So it depends on how you feel about Narzuda, okay? So do you want Pride here? I think I always want Pride here. At least before they nerfed him. Now I'm unsure. I haven't done this dungeon enough to really think about it. But this pack is really count dense. Like, I mean, it gives like a lot of count, okay? And there's not really a better use for the Pride here. Like, a lot of people just get this Pride and then skip. Like, you know what I mean? It's like, that's a really bad Pride. And I'm really shocked to see this because in BFA, this kind of stuff was everywhere. People were always looking for the most count dense pulls that they could get. And that's this mob. Like, this is a really easy mob when you have Pride and the Orb. Like, it destroys it. But I don't know. We'll see, especially, you know, how the game develops. The problem with the route is this mob. This is a mob that I did not anticipate being as problematic as it was going to become, and it is a real problem. This mob is very high health, very high damage, and it only gives 2%, and it spawns a ton of ads that do not give count at all, and it's actually really easily skipped. So as of right now, I have not changed what I'm doing here, but frankly, I should try, and this is that bad of a mob to pull, let's put it that way. It's really inefficient. But if you just kill it quickly, it's fine. Like, it doesn't, you know what I mean? It's not actually a problem. It's just people don't kill it quickly, and then you got like 3 or 4 mobs spawning with it, and it's just really time inefficient. So everything else I love about this route, and I have not currently changed it, but I will be considering a more tyrannical-centric route where we do not get Pride for Narzuda, whatever the name of the dude is. And then we have a more conventional split, which includes skipping and then coming back, as a lot of people do. So stay tuned. If I do end up finding something, I'll post it. But anyway, Theater of Pain. Now, this is the one that we want to talk about, okay? So let's talk about Theater of Pain. So a lot has changed on my Theater of Pain opinion. So let's go through it all so you have a full understanding of this. When I made the original video, okay, we talked about getting Prideful at the right time, and I originally considered the the Altars of Agony to be the hardest split in the dungeon because I always felt like this boss just was really difficult. I was wrong, okay? This is not a difficult boss, and even though it can be difficult, it's certainly not the hardest boss in here, and more so, it's the least time inefficient. That makes sense. It's the easiest boss to make up timer on because of how much damage you get from the boss passively and how easy the mechanics are to deal with while continuing to DPS the boss compared to the other 2 bosses. That's the real issue. So we set out on a journey to find a route that did not have this like as a main focus anymore. Okay. And we found it. And that's what everybody else was doing, where they were going to the Chamber of Conquest first. Okay. So it's a very common route. Everybody runs this, like basically, most tanks run this route. They go Chamber of Conquest first, and it's because they get a Prideful and a Lust for Zab the Unfallen, which I believe is probably the most, it's the weirdest design of a fight ever, and it really is going to stress people out because there's a lot of downtime on this encounter. So yes, if you could maximize your offense on Zab the Unfallen, you should do that. And that was my mindset for a few weeks. And then I started doing the route and started to realize there's 2 big flaws with this, okay? One, it doesn't matter how much you maximize your damage on this boss because people freaking suck at this fight. Like, legitimately, it doesn't matter. They're still going to suck. They're still not going to kill the banners. They're still going to get hit by mechanics. They're still going to get pulled down and use defensives while they're fighting each other and make it take even longer. So I've given up thinking that it's a good idea. But the reason I've completely decommitted from it is this mob right here, okay? The Ancient Captain is just too valuable to mind control. Like, I cannot stress this enough. If you are a Blood Death Knight or even a Frost Death Knight, you should always mind control this mob. It does insane things, okay? It provides 2% damage to the entire group. I think it's like a 5% AoE reduction. It can interrupt mobs. It can also demo shout mobs. It's insanely valuable. If I can get this mob the start of the dungeon, I would keep it for the entire 30 or 40, whatever minutes it is, okay? But you can't. So now we set out on this more like Blood DK specific route, okay? So now what we have is this route, okay? And this is going to be a little bit of a wild ride here. So let's start. So we got up here. We're not skipping anything. People like to skip these and come back to them. We are not doing that. That will not work with this route, okay? So anyway, then we go downstairs and we actually do the exact same split that we did before. Literally nothing changed here. This is exactly what we used to do. We go for Cult to Rock first. And again, Blood DK specific. This part of the dungeon gets carried by Blood DK. I will tell you, legitimately, you are overpowered in this part of the dungeon. Because AMC is so powerful for some of these mobs. You could also, when it's inspiring or you're having trouble with these 2 casters, you could mind control one and kill it after. But most importantly, if you do the same route, you could mind control this Magus, Bone Magus, and then get the Prideful on this platform. And that, I tell you, I cannot, like, I think this is invaluable. Like, legitimately, this is so freaking important. It's unbelievable. And because not only is it bad to get the Prideful here and then have to run all the way up here, you lose a lot of time on it, but it's also really hard to fight on these small platforms. And with certain weeks, it could get really bad. Like with the current week, the knockback affix or that storming affix, it's like legitimately really difficult to fight on these platforms. So this is such a huge moment for DK that I feel like you have to flex it. And then anyway, you come down, finish this. So now this is where it gets tricky. So now that you're back in the main area here, you're now going to go for 2 pulls on this side. That is these 3 mobs and then one, like whichever one of these is active, okay? And this is a bit odd, and you should probably communicate to your group that you're going to do this. But we're doing this so we set up good splits for the rest of the dungeon. And now what we have accomplished is a pride on every boss, which is way better than the old route in that way. Obviously not on the last boss. But anyway, you're going to get this count here, and then you're going to go back to the Carnage area, whatever you call it, the Plague area, and you're going to get the rest of this stuff here. What I like to do is pull all of this together, mind control this guy, get him out because he's the one that's going to heal every time he uses that ability. Get everything else together, make sure you're interrupting the Sludge Spewers, and kill it all in a big AoE pull, and then kill this solo, and you will have your split, which for some reason I didn't mark, I guess. Anyway, I don't know what's going on here. But anyway, you'll have your split and you'll have Pride here. You're going to kill these 2 mobs or this like small pack with Pride. And then you're going to go skip one of these guys. Okay, so this isn't even the route, I guess is the problem. It's probably this one. Yeah. Okay. So anyway, that's fine. Doesn't matter. Still showing it off. So you're going to get Pride here. You're going to pull these mobs together, and then you're going to skip both of these. Like one of these has to be skipped. You can't, you obviously don't like go both directions, but you figure out which direction is easier to skip. Literally all you do to skip it is just let it pat all the way to this side and then run by it. Okay. Or if you have a rogue, you can just shroud. And then you come downstairs and you get the rest of the count down here, and you'll have a perfect split no matter what. You will not be over count here. You will actually need to kill all of these mobs to get the Pride, and then you will go to boss with Pride. And then that's it. You literally just finish the dungeon, go back to Chamber of Conquest, and get and mind control this mob. And again, it's so, like, even if we literally only have it for the last part of the dungeon, it's just so important to have. This guy is so valuable, man. Even if you're just taking him out of the pack, like, this is one of the hardest packs in the entire game, I feel like, if you do not mind control this mob, especially on Inspiring Week. So, yeah, let's get that mob on our side. You know what I mean? If you're playing Bloody Gate, if you're not, you'll probably want to look at the more conventional routes. But anyway, a lot of talking there. So I hope this has helped. We'll have the spreadsheet updated with all the new routes, and you can take a look at them and import them yourself. And if you have any questions, let me know. But I will continue to update this, and I hope that this has helped. And yeah, hope this continues to get you where you want to be now that you're pushing higher keys. And if you have any, any critiques or anything that you'd like to add, let me know.